Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his uniform crisp and his posture straight. The massive room stretched above him like a cathedral, with 7 towering seats arranged in a semicircle. Each seat held an alien representative. Creatures from civilizations that had sailed between stars for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Jack cleared his throat and began his speech. He talked about Earth's achievements, about how humans had unified their world after centuries of war. He spoke about their colonies, their technology, and their desire to join the galactic community as equals. His words echoed in the vast chamber, carrying hope and pride. The alien representatives listened in silence. Some had multiple eyes that blinked at different intervals. Others had skin that shimmered like oil on water. The Valorians looked almost human, but with silver skin that glowed softly. They seemed kind, nodding along as Jack spoke. But the Zethrid representative, High Chancellor Vex Thor, sat rigid in his seat. His body was covered in dark scales, and his eyes were cold and yellow. When Jack finished speaking, Vex Thor stood up with a motion that seemed designed to intimidate. "The Council has reviewed Earth's petition," Vex Thor announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "We find humanity unworthy of membership in the Galactic Union." Jack felt his stomach drop. He had expected debate, maybe some conditions, but not outright rejection. "You are children," Vex Thor continued. "Violent children who have barely stopped killing each other long enough to build rockets. Your species unified only 50 years ago. Before that, you spent millennia in constant warfare. You are primitives, playing with technology you barely understand." Other representatives nodded in agreement. The Krellian delegate, a creature with too many limbs, chittered something that the translator rendered as agreed. Only the Valorian representative looked uncomfortable, her silver face showing what might have been sadness. Jack wanted to argue, to defend his species, but the Council's decision was final. The vote came quickly. 6 against, 1 abstaining. Earth's application for membership was denied. Back in his quarters on the station, Jack met with his team. Commander Lisa Chen paced the small room, her face flushed with anger. "They called us primitives," she said, "after everything we've achieved. They're afraid," said Dr. Ben Carter, the mission's xenobiology expert. He was a thin man with glasses that constantly slipped down his nose. "We went from first flight to faster-than-light travel in just 200 years. Species out here take thousands of years to make that journey. We scare them." "So what do we do?" asked Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, the communications officer. Jack looked out the window at the stars. "We go home. We keep building." What Jack didn't know was that High Chancellor Vex Thor was in a private meeting at that very moment. The chamber was hidden deep in the station, shielded from all recording devices. Vex Thor sat across from 2 other aliens, Supreme Commander Drax of the Draxian Collective and Overlord Krell of the Krellian Supremacy. "The humans are a threat," Vex Thor said. "They advance too quickly. In another century, they will be powerful enough to challenge us. Then we must act now," Supreme Commander Drax replied. His species looked like walking crystals, their bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns, while they are still weak. "A preemptive strike," Overlord Krell added. "We eliminate the threat before it grows." "The Council will object," Vex Thor noted. "The Council votes on what we tell them to vote on," Drax said coldly. "By the time they react, it will be too late. The humans will be gone." 3 days later, Jack Morrison stood in the Unified Earth Command Center on Earth. The room was filled with screens and busy officers monitoring communications from across human space. President Nicole Bradford sat at the head of the conference table, her face tired but determined. "The Council rejected us," Jack reported. "They see us as too young, too violent." General Kevin Hayes, a broad-shouldered man with gray hair, slammed his fist on the table. "After we followed every rule, every protocol, we bent over backward to show we were civilized." "We keep trying," President Bradford said firmly. "We continue our diplomatic efforts. We show them through our actions that we deserve a place in the galactic community. Dr. Carter shifted uncomfortably. Madam President, I should mention something. In my studies of galactic species, I've noticed that many of them have never experienced real war. They evolved on gentle worlds. They unified easily. They don't understand conflict the way we do. What are you saying, Doctor? The President asked. I'm saying that some of them might see conflict very differently than we do. To them, eliminating a potential threat might seem logical. President Bradford nodded slowly. Noted. But we will continue to pursue peace. That's what civilized people do. The meeting ended, and everyone returned to their duties. Earth kept building, kept growing, kept reaching for the stars. On New Harmony, a farming colony 3 light-years from Earth, people went about their daily lives. Children played in fields of grain that swayed in the alien wind. Farmers drove their machines across vast plains. In the colony's central hub, 2.3 million people lived peaceful lives, far from the politics of the Galactic Council. Amy Rodriguez had transferred there after the mission, wanting a quieter life. She worked in the communications center. We see a boring job that mostly involved routing messages between colonies. That morning started like any other. Amy brought her coffee to her station and began her shift. The system was quiet. Everything was normal. Then every alarm in the building started screaming at once. Amy's screen filled with warnings. Ships had just appeared in orbit. Dozens of them. Their signatures matched the Zethrid Empire's fleet. She opened a channel. Unknown vessels. This is New Harmony Control. Please state your intentions. There was no response. Amy watched in growing horror as the ships moved into formation above the planet. She recognized the pattern. It was a bombardment formation. Unknown vessels. You are in violation of colony space. Please respond. The first energy beam hit the northern continent. Amy saw the signature on her screen. A bright flare that represented unimaginable destruction. Then another, and another. They're firing on us. Someone screamed in the background. Amy's fingers flew across her controls. She activated the emergency beacon, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is New Harmony. We are under attack. The Zethrid fleet is bombarding civilian targets. We need help. They're killing everyone. No warning. Why? The communications array exploded. Amy's screen went dark. In orbit, the Zethrid fleet continued its methodical work, turning the peaceful colony into a burning graveyard. In the Galactic Council chambers, alarms began to sound. But it was already far too late. Commander Dan Pierce had been studying stellar formation patterns when the distress call came through. His science vessel, the HMS Newton, was only 2 hours away from New Harmony at maximum speed. He ordered his crew to jump immediately. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. What Dan saw made his blood turn cold. New Harmony was burning. The oceans were boiling. The atmosphere glowed red with heat. 30 Zethrid warships hung in orbit, their weapons still firing at a planet that was already dead. Sensors confirm no life signs on the surface, his science officer reported quietly. Population was 2.3 million. Now, reading 0. Dan opened a communication channel to the Zethrid fleet. This is Commander Pierce of the HMS Newton. Why have you attacked this colony? These were civilians. Farmers. Scientists. Children. One of the Zethrid ships responded. The voice was flat and emotionless. Vermin. Must be exterminated. The channel went dead. The Zethrid fleet began moving away. Their mission complete. Dan watched them go, his hands shaking. He had no weapons that could challenge 30 warships. He could only watch and record everything. Within 6 hours, more reports flooded into Earth Command. Freedom Station, a mining colony, with 1.5 million people, had been attacked. New Seattle, home to 3 million colonists, was burning. Terra Verde, a beautiful ocean world with 2.2 million inhabitants, had gone silent. Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the command center, watching the reports come in. Each one brought news of more death. The aliens weren't attacking military bases. They were targeting civilians. Women, children, the elderly, anyone who called themselves human. This is systematic, General Kevin Hayes said, his voice tight with rage. They're not trying to defeat us. They're trying to wipe us out. President Bradford arrived in the command center, her face pale. Status report. 8.7 million dead in 3 days, Madam President, Jack said. Each word felt like swallowing glass. Intelligence reports that the Krellian and Draxian fleets are moving to join the assault. 3 species have allied against us. Their goal is extinction. The President closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were hard. Options? We can surrender, General Hayes said. Hope they show mercy. They've shown us what their mercy looks like, Commander Lisa Chen said from her station. Burning worlds and dead children. Intelligence Officer Tyler Grant pulled up a star map. Red markers showed enemy fleet positions. They were everywhere, surrounding human space like a noose. They've divided their forces to hit all our colonies simultaneously. They want to finish this quickly before we can mount a defense. Captain Kate Sullivan, who commanded the diplomatic ship Enterprise, had rushed to the Galactic Council station. She burst into the chamber where the council was in session, not waiting for permission to speak. You have to help us, she pleaded. The Zethrid Empire is committing genocide. They're killing civilians. Millions are already dead. The council members looked uncomfortable. The Valorian representative, Elder Sora, had tears running down her silver face. But the others remained unmoved. This is an internal matter, one representative said. Internal? Kate's voice rose. They're exterminating an entire species. We cannot interfere in regional conflicts, another council member stated. It would violate our charter. Kate played the recordings. She showed them New Harmony burning. She showed them the wreckage of evacuation ships that had been hunted down and destroyed, filled with fleeing families. She showed them everything. Elder Sora spoke, her voice breaking. This is wrong. We must act. But the vote came down 6-1. The council would offer thoughts and concerns, but would take no action. Kate stood there, stunned. She had believed in the council, in galactic law, in the idea that civilization meant something. You're cowards, she said quietly. All of you. You let this happen. She turned and walked out. Behind her, Elder Sora wept. But her people were pacifists. They could not fight. They could only grieve. Back on Earth, President Bradford sat in a darkened situation room. Around her were the leaders of Earth's military and government. On the screens, reports continued to come in. Another colony lost. Another million dead. We have no allies, Tyler Grant reported. The council has abandoned us. We're alone. Then we fight alone, General Hayes said. But we need to face facts. If we fight by their rules, by civilized rules, we lose. They have more ships, more resources, more time. Commander Lisa Chen spoke up. We still have the archives. Every military database, from before unification, every tactic, every weapon, everything we agreed to never use again when we formed the unified Earth. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what she meant. 200 years ago, when Earth had finally unified after centuries of war, they had locked away all the terrible things humans had learned about killing each other. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical agents, kinetic bombardment, tactics that civilized people had agreed were too horrible to ever use again. Dr. Ben Carter adjusted his glasses nervously. Are what? Lisa interrupted. Too inhumane? Too terrible? Tell that to the families burning on New Harmony. President Bradford looked at each person in the room. She saw anger, grief, and determination. She thought about the millions already dead. She thought about the billions still alive on Earth and the remaining colonies. We tried peace, she said slowly. We followed their rules. We asked to join their civilization. We believed in diplomacy and law. Her voice grew harder. They answered by murdering our children. She stood up, and everyone in the room stood with her. Gentlemen and ladies, we tried their way. We followed their protocols. We were civilized. She paused, her eyes scanning each face. Now we stop being civilized. General Hayes, activate the dark protocols. Commander Chen, unseal the military archives. Dr. Carter, start pulling every weapons project we mothballed. Madam President, someone objected. Some of those weapons. I know what they are, Bradford cut him off. I know what they can do. But they started this. They chose genocide. Now they're going to learn what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. She looked at the star map, showing the advancing alien fleets. They think we're primitives? They think we're weak because we chose to be peaceful? Fine. Let's show them what humans really are when you take mercy off the table. Orders went out across Earth and to every military installation. Files that hadn't been opened in 2 centuries were suddenly accessed. Weapons that had been dismantled were rebuilt. Tactics that had been forbidden were studied again. In the shipyards, the battleship Vengeance was being fitted with weapons that hadn't been seen in generations. Nuclear warheads, particle beams, electromagnetic pulse generators, and things worse than all of those combined. Admiral Morrison looked at the ship and felt a chill. God forgive us for what we're about to do. God can judge us later, General Hayes said beside him. Right now, we have a species to save. The Zethrid fleet was approaching another human colony, confident in their superiority. They had already destroyed 4 worlds without resistance. They expected the same easy victory. They had no idea that everything was about to change. Humanity had tried being civilized. Now, they were going to remember everything they had learned in 10,000 years of warfare. The galaxy was about to discover why Earth was called a death world. The laboratory deep beneath Earth Command had not been opened in 200 years. Dr. Ben Carter stood at the entrance as the massive doors unsealed with a hiss that sounded like a warning. Inside, files and equipment waited in the darkness like sleeping monsters. These were banned for a reason, Dr. Carter said to his team. His hand trembled as he activated the lights. His assistant, Dr. Ashley Morgan, walked past him into the room. So was genocide, she said flatly. Let's get to work. The files contained everything. Weapons that could crack planets. Diseases tailored to specific genetic codes. Chemicals that could turn atmospheres toxic. AI programs that learned from every battle and adapted. Nuclear devices that could be hidden in asteroids. Nanomachines that could dissolve ships from the inside. Dr. Carter felt sick reading through them. We were monsters, he whispered. No, Ashley corrected him. We were survivors, and we need to remember how to survive again. Commander Lisa Chen worked in a different facility, studying tactical databases with military historians. They reviewed wars from Earth's bloody past. Vietnam, where a smaller force held off a superpower through unconventional tactics. World War II, where entire nations mobilized for total war. The guerrilla campaigns across history, where weaker forces defeated stronger ones through cunning and ruthlessness. The aliens fight like gentlemen, Lisa observed. Fleet actions, clear battle lines, honor codes. They've never faced an enemy that doesn't play by rules. So we don't play by rules, said Colonel Jake Palmer, a Special Forces commander. We hit their supply lines. We ambush their patrols. We make them afraid to sleep. That's not civilized warfare, one historian protested. Lisa turned to look at him. There's no such thing as civilized warfare. That's something comfortable people tell themselves. War is about making the enemy stop fighting. Period. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, looking at his new weapons systems. The ship had been refitted with technology that made him uncomfortable. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers that could cut through multiple ships with one shot. Relativistic kinetic kill vehicles that hit with the force of small stars. AI-guided missile swarms that learned and adapted to enemy defenses. "Sir, the Zethrid fleet is approaching the Harmony system," his tactical officer reported. "They're going to destroy the memorial satellites we placed for the dead." Jack's jaw tightened. The Zethrid were returning to the first colony they had burned, probably to make sure nothing had survived. They thought humans were broken, defeated, easy prey. "Take us in," Jack ordered. "Silent running. Hide us in the debris field from their bombardment." The Vengeance slipped through the wreckage of New Harmony, moving between chunks of what used to be buildings and ships and dreams. The Zethrid fleet hung in space, confident and unaware. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, Tactical reported. "Target every ship," Jack said. "Fire on my mark." The Zethrid had no idea they were being hunted until it was too late. The Vengeance emerged from the debris field and unleashed hell. Nuclear warheads exploded in perfect sequence, blinding sensors and disrupting shields. Kinetic kill vehicles moving at a fraction of light speed smashed through hulls like they were paper. The X-ray lasers carved through multiple ships in single sweeps. The alien fleet tried to respond, but the AI swarm missiles were already among them. Each missile learned from the others, sharing data in real time, adapting to every defensive measure. When the Zethrid deployed electronic countermeasures, the missiles switched to different guidance systems. When they put up point defense, the missiles came from new angles. In less than 10 minutes, 15 Zethrid warships were destroyed. The survivors tried to flee. Jack let most of them go, but he captured one ship, disabled but intact, and transmitted a message. "Tell your High Chancellor what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. Tell him this is just the beginning. Tell him humanity remembers how to wage war." The captured ship was released. Jack watched it limp away into faster-than-light travel. He felt no satisfaction, only a grim determination. Captain Jake Palmer commanded a new type of vessel. The Ghost Runner was small, fast, and equipped for unconventional warfare. It didn't look like a military ship. That was the point. Jake took his ship to a major Krellian supply route. Instead of engaging enemy warships directly, he mined the hyperspace lanes with nuclear devices. When Krellian supply ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they found themselves in a minefield. The Krellian commanders protested through diplomatic channels. "This is dishonorable. You're attacking supply ships." Earth's response was broadcast by President Bradford herself. "You lost the right to talk about honor when you started killing our children. You wanted war. This is what war looks like." Jake didn't stop with mines. He used captured alien transponder codes to make his ship look like friendly vessels. He approached enemy supply depots, broadcasting Krellian identification signals. Once he got close, he released nanomachine swarms that burrowed into enemy ships and destroyed them from within. When Krellian ships began intensive scanning of all vessels, Jake adapted. He hid in asteroid fields. He shut down all systems and drifted like debris. He used civilian distress beacons to lure enemy ships into ambushes. Every tactic that civilized warfare forbade, he used. Dr. Ashley Morgan achieved a different kind of breakthrough. She had been working with captured alien genetic samples, and she made a terrible discovery. The 3 species attacking humanity had very specific biological vulnerabilities. Their immune systems had never evolved to fight aggressive pathogens. They came from gentle worlds where diseases were rare. "I can create species-specific bioweapons," she reported to the ethics committee. "Viruses that will only affect Zethrid, Krellian, or Draxian biology. They would spread through their populations like fire." The committee members looked horrified. That's biological warfare. It's banned under the Terran Accords. Ashley pulled up footage on the screen. New Harmony burning. Freedom Station destroyed. Dead children floating in the wreckage of evacuation ships. This is genocide, she said coldly. We can either fight back with every weapon we have, or we can die with our principles intact. Choose. End quote. The committee approved the project. The bioweapons were loaded onto captured alien supply ships and released at major enemy ports. Within weeks, plague ships became humanity's most feared tactic. The diseases weren't meant to kill, but to terrify and disable. Entire enemy crews would fall ill, unable to fight, forcing their fleets to withdraw. General Kevin Hayes planned the largest operation yet. Operation Retribution would target the Draxian homeworld, not to destroy it, but to send a message. Earth forces jumped into the system with overwhelming force, bypassing the defensive fleets. Instead of bombing cities, they hit the planet with electromagnetic pulse weapons. Every electronic system on the planet failed simultaneously. Power grids collapsed, communications went dark, transportation stopped. The entire planetary infrastructure crashed in seconds, but not a single civilian died. Hayes had been very specific about that. A message was broadcast to the Draxian people. We could do to you what you did to us. We could burn your world and kill your children. We choose not to. Today, this is your only warning. Withdraw from this war, or next time we won't be merciful. The Draxian collective government collapsed within 48 hours. Their people, sitting in the dark without power or communications, realized that humans had held their lives in their hands and chosen to spare them. The terror of that mercy was more effective than any weapon. The Draxian collective sued for peace. They withdrew all forces from human space and offered reparations. They became the first species to surrender. The Galactic Council watched all of this in growing horror. They sent messages to Earth, offering to mediate peace talks. President Bradford rejected them. "Where were you when we needed you?" she replied. "We asked for your help, and you gave us words. Now we don't need words. We need the enemy to stop." Intelligence Officer Tyler Grant monitored communications across the galaxy. The other species were no longer calling humans primitives. New terms appeared in their transmissions. Death Worlders. The Mad Apes. The species that refuses to die. The ones who remember how to kill. Dr. Ben Carter analyzed the psychological impact. Most galactic species evolved on peaceful worlds, he explained to President Bradford. They unified easily because they had no real competition. They've never experienced total war. To them, conflict is a game with rules. They don't understand what happens when survival is the only rule that matters. End quote. Quote, "And now they're learning," Bradford said. "Now they're learning," Carter agreed. "And they're terrified. The Krellian supremacy, watching the Draxian collapse and seeing human tactics become more ruthless each day, made a fatal miscalculation. They decided to defend their homeworld and dare humanity to attack it." Admiral Morrison looked at the fortress world on his screens and smiled without humor. "They think we'll break ourselves against their defenses." "What are your orders, sir?" his executive officer asked. "We don't attack it," Morrison said. "We siege it. Cut off every supply route, destroy every orbital station. And we wait. Let's see how long their resolve lasts when their people start going hungry." The siege of Krellian Prime began. Humanity, the species that had been called primitives just months ago, demonstrated a mastery of warfare that the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. They were patient, ruthless, and utterly determined. The Zethrid Empire watched all of this and realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something they didn't understand and couldn't defeat. Intelligence Officer Tyler Grant sat in his darkened office, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. What he saw was fascinating and disturbing. The way other species talked about humanity had completely changed. "Listen to this," he said to Dr. Ben Carter, playing a recorded transmission from a neutral trading station. They're calling us Death Worlders. They say Earth is a nightmare planet that created nightmare people. Ben listened to the alien voices speaking in fear about humans. They've never encountered anything like us, he said. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds where survival was easy. Mild weather, abundant food, few predators. Earth is a death trap by comparison. Hurricanes, earthquakes, predators everywhere, diseases that jump between species. We evolved in hell compared to their worlds. And that made us into what? Tyler asked. Survivors, Ben answered. Adaptable, creative, and absolutely determined not to die. They don't understand that mindset because they've never needed it. IMR. 10 side. IMR. 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 Do IMR. IMR. Dr. Maria Santos, a xenopsychologist, joined them with more reports. I've been analyzing alien military doctrine. Most galactic species have rules of engagement that are centuries old. Wars are fought like chess games, with agreed-upon boundaries. Civilians are off limits. Cultural sites are protected. There are entire categories of weapons they would never use because they consider them dishonorable. And then they met us, Tyler said. And then they met us, Maria confirmed. We don't think of war as a game. We think of it as survival. When they killed our civilians, they broke their own rules first. Now they're facing an enemy that has no rules, and they have no idea how to handle it. Krellian Prime had been under siege for 4 months. The once proud fortress world was now a prison. Admiral Morrison's fleet surrounded the planet, cutting off all supply routes. Nothing got in or out. The orbital stations had been destroyed. The defensive satellites were gone. The planet was alone. Commodore Brandon Cole managed the siege with cold efficiency. He tracked every supply ship that tried to break through, every communication that tried to escape. The blockade was perfect. Sir, we're intercepting transmissions from the surface, his communications officer reported. They're running out of food. Riots have started in the major cities. Brandon looked at the data. The planet had stockpiled 6 months of supplies. They were now in month 4. Maintain the siege. No ships, in or out. Some of the crew think we should just attack and end it, the officer said quietly. We could, Brandon agreed. But this way saves human lives, and it sends a message. You can have the strongest walls in the galaxy, but if you can't eat, you still lose. On the surface of Krellian Prime, the supremacy government was collapsing. Food riots had become daily events. The military had enough ammunition to fight for years, but their families were starving. Morale had broken. The Supremacy Council met in their bunker deep beneath the capital city. Supreme Leader Krell looked around at his advisors, all of them gaunt and tired. We have 2 months of food remaining, the supply minister reported. After that, people start dying. The humans won't negotiate? Krell asked. They've sent one message, the communications minister said. Surrender or starve. No other terms. Krell had started this war confident that humanity was too primitive to pose a real threat. Now his world was dying, and his people blamed him. What are our military options? None, the defense minister admitted. We can't break the siege. Every attempt has failed. The humans fight like nothing we've ever encountered. They're patient, ruthless, and they don't care about honor. They only care about winning. Sound. On Earth, not everyone supported what humanity had become. Senator Laura Mitchell led a growing group of politicians who argued that Earth was losing its soul. She requested a private meeting with President Bradford. They met in the presidential office, just the two of them. Laura didn't waste time. We're becoming monsters. Nicole. Bradford looked tired. She had aged years in the past months. We're becoming survivors. We're using bioweapons. We're sieging planets. We're attacking supply lines and mining hyperspace lanes. We're doing everything we once said was too terrible to use. Laura's voice shook with emotion. Where does it stop? And where? Bradford pulled up files on her desk screen. She showed Laura intercepted Zethrid communications, celebrating the destruction of New Harmony. Krellian propaganda, calling for complete human extinction. Draxian military reports discussing the most efficient ways to hunt down human evacuation ships. They started by burning children alive, Bradford said quietly. They hunted down families trying to escape. They targeted hospitals and schools. They wanted genocide. She looked at Laura directly. What would you have us do? Die politely? I would have us win without becoming like them. Laura answered. War doesn't work that way, Bradford said. You can't fight an enemy that wants you dead and still maintain perfect moral purity. You can only choose between survival and principles. I chose survival. If that makes me a monster, then I'm a monster. But our species still exists. Laura left the meeting with no good answers. She understood Bradford's logic. But that didn't make it easier to accept what humanity had become. High Chancellor Vex Thor of the Zethrid Empire made his decision. The Draxians had surrendered. The Krellians were about to. If he didn't act now, he would face humanity alone. He needed to strike at the heart of their power and break their will to fight. He assembled the largest Zethrid fleet ever created. 500 warships, pulled from every corner of their empire. Their target was Earth itself. If they could destroy the human homeworld, the war would end. The fleet jumped into the solar system with all weapons hot. They expected heavy defenses, but were confident that their numbers would overwhelm anything humanity could deploy. Admiral Morrison had been waiting for exactly this move. He had left Earth looking vulnerable on purpose, and the Zethrid had taken the bait. The solar system had been turned into the largest trap in human history. Hidden weapons platforms in the asteroid belt activated. Thousands of them, all slaved to AI coordination systems. Drone swarms that had been drifting like debris came alive. Minefields that had been placed along predicted approach vectors detonated in perfect sequence. The Earth Defense Fleet, larger than the aliens knew, dropped out of hiding positions around Jupiter and Saturn. They had been practicing this ambush for months. All units. This is Morrison. Execute Operation Mousetrap. The battle was chaos. The Zethrid fleet found themselves surrounded by weapons coming from every direction. The platforms in the asteroid belt fired nuclear-pumped lasers that could reach across the solar system. The drone swarms attacked in coordinated waves, each drone learning from the other's deaths. The mines disrupted their formations and damaged their shields. And through it all, the Earth Defense Fleet closed in like a vice. Captain Kate Sullivan commanded the dreadnought Retribution, finally given a warship after months of diplomatic failure. She led the final assault on the Zethrid flagship, where High Chancellor Vex Thor commanded the battle. Target their bridge. Disable but don't destroy, Kate ordered. We're taking prisoners today. The Retribution's guns fired with surgical precision. The Zethrid flagship tried to run, but it was surrounded. Its engines exploded. Its weapons went silent. Its shields failed. Within an hour, boarding parties had secured the ship and captured High Chancellor Vex Thor alive. Of the 500 ships that entered the solar system, only 30 escaped. It was the most decisive victory of the war. President Bradford made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. High Chancellor Vex Thor would stand trial for genocide. Not a military tribunal, but a civilian court with proper legal procedures. The trial would be broadcast across all galactic channels. The courtroom was simple and dignified. Vex Thor stood in the defendant's area, surrounded by guards but not chained. He watched the proceedings with a mixture of confusion and contempt. The prosecutor, Attorney Chris Morgan, presented the evidence methodically. Recordings of the attacks, testimony from survivors, documentation of 11.2 million human deaths, intercepted communications showing the attacks were planned and deliberate. Vex Thor defended himself. We acted to prevent a future threat. Humanity was dangerous. We eliminated the danger. By starting with farmers and children? Chris asked. Your fleets bypassed military installations to bomb civilian targets. You hunted evacuation ships. You targeted schools and hospitals. If humans were such a threat, why did you start by killing those least able to fight back? Vexthor had no answer. The evidence was overwhelming. The court, consisting of human judges from multiple nations, found him guilty of genocide and crimes against humanity. The sentence was life imprisonment without parole. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Earth, even in its darkest hour, even after everything it had suffered and done, still maintained the rule of law. They could have executed Vex's Thor in revenge. Instead, they gave him a trial and treated him according to their principles. It was the most powerful message humanity had sent yet. They could be ruthless in war, but they remained bound by law. They could unleash terrible weapons, but they still believed in justice. Some species began to understand that Earth wasn't becoming monsters. Earth was showing what it meant to be survivors who remembered what civilization was supposed to mean. The siege of Krellian Prime ended on a cold morning in the capital city. Supreme Leader Krell walked out of his bunker carrying a white flag, the universal symbol of surrender recognized across the galaxy. Behind him, his government officials followed, all of them thin and defeated. General Kevin Hayes accepted the surrender in person. He stood on the landing platform as Krellian representatives approached. They had expected anger, maybe revenge. Instead, Hayes simply nodded. Effective immediately, all Krellian military forces will disarm, Hayes stated. War criminals will be tried. Reparations will be paid. Your government will be restructured under Earth supervision. Until we are satisfied, you no longer pose a threat. And if we refuse? One Krellian official asked weakly. Hayes gestured to the fleet in orbit. Then the siege continues. Your choice. They chose surrender. The Krellian supremacy, once a major galactic power, became a vassal state of Earth. Their military was dismantled. Their leaders faced war crimes, tribunals. Their people, starving and angry, accepted occupation as the price of their government's failure. Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the observation deck of the Vengeance, looking down at Krellian Prime. Commander Lisa Chen joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. We won, she said, handing him a cup. Did we? Jack asked. Look at what we became to achieve it. Lisa sipped her coffee. We became what we needed to be. The alternative was extinction. I know, Jack said quietly. But I remember what we were before. I remember when we believed in peaceful coexistence, when we thought civilized behavior mattered. He gestured to the occupied planet below. Now we're conquerors. We use bioweapons. We siege planets until they starve. We've done things that would have horrified us a year ago. The galaxy taught us that civilization only works when everyone agrees to be civilized. Lisa replied. They broke that agreement first. We just adapted faster than they expected. On the Galactic Council station, a small ship arrived carrying Elder Sora, the Valorian representative. She requested an audience with Earth's government and was granted a meeting with President Bradford. They met in a simple conference room, far from the grand chambers where Earth had once been rejected. Sora looked older, her silver skin dimmer than before. I come with a message from the Galactic Council, Sora said. They wish to offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Union. They also extend their deepest apologies for failing to act when you needed help. President Bradford studied the Valorian for a long moment. Where were you when our children burned? Where was your council when we begged for help? We failed you, Sora admitted, tears on her face. We were cowards. We prioritized our comfort over your survival. There is no excuse. No. Bradford agreed. There isn't. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. Tell your council that we reject membership. We will sign a non-aggression pact. We will engage in trade and cultural exchange. But we will not join a union that abandons its own principles when they become inconvenient. Sora nodded sadly. I understand. If I may ask, what will Earth do now? We will remember, Bradford said simply. We will never forget what happened when we trusted others to protect us. From now on, we protect ourselves. Commander Lisa Chen oversaw the reconstruction of New Harmony. The planet would never be what it was, but it could support life again. Terraforming crews worked to stabilize the atmosphere. Engineers built new cities on top of the ashes of the old ones. At the center of the new capital, a memorial was erected. It was a simple black wall with 11.2 million names carved into it. Every person who died in the genocide was listed: farmers, teachers, children, elderly, scientists, artists. All of them remembered. Admiral Morrison attended the dedication ceremony. He walked along the wall, reading names. Each one was a person with dreams and families and futures stolen by hatred. He stopped at one section where the names of children were listed. Some were infants. Some were teenagers. All were dead. We made them pay, a voice said beside him. Captain Jake Palmer stood there, also reading the names. The Zethrid Empire is broken. The Krellians are occupied. The Draxians surrendered. We won. Over the now. We won. At what cost? Morrison asked. Jake didn't answer immediately. He looked at the names on the wall. We're alive. They're not. Sometimes, survival is the only victory that matters. Dr. Ben Carter presented his final report to President Bradford. The war had changed humanity in fundamental ways. They had advanced technologically by 50 years, compressed into just months of desperate innovation. They had also changed culturally. We're harder now, Ben explained. Less trusting. More united. But also, more isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Pre-war, humans had a wide range of opinions about military spending and foreign policy. Now, there's near universal agreement. We maintain the strongest military in known space, and we never depend on others for our security. Is that healthy? Bradford asked. I don't know, Ben admitted. But it's reality. The galaxy taught us that kindness can be mistaken for weakness, and mercy for cowardice. We won't make that mistake again. The New Earth Doctrine was formalized in a document called the Eternal Vigil Act. It mandated that Earth would maintain a military capable of defending all human worlds simultaneously. The Dark Protocols would remain active. The weapons that had been sealed away for 200 years would stay in the arsenal. Humanity would remain ready for war, even while hoping for peace. President Bradford signed the act in a private ceremony. The inscription on the bill read, "So that we may be civilized again, we must first ensure we survive to see tomorrow." 5 years after the war ended, Admiral Jake Palmer took his young daughter to visit the memorial on New Harmony. She was 7 years old and full of questions. They walked along the black wall together, her small hand in his large one. "Daddy, why are there so many names?" she asked. "Because bad people did a terrible thing," Jake answered. "They tried to kill all humans. But you stopped them," she said. Jake knelt down to her level. "I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I did what needed to be done to keep people like you safe. Sometimes that meant doing things that weren't nice." She processed this with the simple logic of a child. "Did you do bad things to stop bad people?" "Yes," Jake said honestly. He had promised himself he would never lie to her. "I did bad things to stop worse things. Sometimes, that's how the world works. Are we the bad guys, Daddy?" Jake looked at the names on the wall. Thousands of them just in this section alone. Children who never got to grow up. Families who never got to go home. Dreams that ended in fire. No, sweetheart. We're the survivors. The galaxy thought we would be easy to kill because we were kind, because we followed rules, because we tried to be peaceful. He pointed to the memorial. They learned that humans can be kind and still be dangerous. We can follow rules and still know how to fight. We can want peace, but remember how to wage war. So we won? She asked. We survived, Jake corrected. And we made sure that no one will ever mistake our kindness for weakness again. They continued walking along the memorial. In orbit above them, the Earth Defense Fleet patrolled constantly. Humanity's ships now guarded every colony, every station, every place humans called home. The fleet was large, well-armed, and staffed by people who remembered what happened when Earth was unprepared. President Bradford, now in her second term, addressed the citizens of Earth and all the colonies in a public broadcast. She stood in front of the memorial on New Harmony, the names of the dead visible behind her. 5 years ago, we faced extinction, she began. 3 species allied to wipe us from the galaxy. They succeeded in killing 11.2 million of us. They failed to kill the rest. She paused, letting that sink in. We won that war. But victory came at a cost. We had to remember every terrible thing our ancestors had learned about warfare. We had to set aside our principles to ensure our survival. Some ask if we went too far. If we became like our enemies. I say no. We remained bound by law, even in our darkest hour. We gave our enemies trials instead of executions. We showed mercy when we could, and ruthlessness when we had to. She turned to look at the memorial behind her. These names represent why we fought. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but because existence is not negotiable. Today, Earth stands strong. Our military is the most powerful in the known galaxy. Our technology advances every day. Our colonies are protected. Our people are safe. Her voice hardened slightly. And every species that looks at us knows one simple truth. Humans can be your friends or your nightmares. Choose wisely which you prefer. She ended the broadcast with words that would become humanity's unofficial motto. We tried being civilized. They answered with genocide. So we showed them what Deathworlders really are when you take civilization away. Now the galaxy understands. Earth may want peace, but Earth knows war, and that makes all the difference. In the years that followed, humanity maintained the eternal vigil. Ships patrolled the borders. Weapons systems stayed active. The dark protocols remained unsealed. New recruits joined the military and learned the history of the genocide, ensuring that no generation would forget. Earth engaged in trade with other species. They exchanged culture and science. They even formed cautious alliances. But they never again relied on others for protection. They never again trusted the Galactic Council to defend them. They never again made the mistake of thinking that being civilized meant being helpless. The galaxy adjusted to the new reality. Humanity was no longer the young species begging for acceptance. They were the species that had survived extinction and emerged stronger. Some aliens admired them. Some feared them. All respected them. And on every human world, memorials listed the names of those who died in the genocide. Every citizen learned their history. Every child was taught the lesson that their ancestors paid for in blood. Kindness is a choice, not a weakness. Civilization is an agreement, not a surrender. And survival, ultimately, is non-negotiable. The inscription on the Eternal Vigil Act remained the guiding principle. So that we may be civilized again, we must first ensure we survive to see tomorrow. Humanity survived. And the galaxy never forgot what happened when they tried to make humans extinct.